In the shadow of one of history's darkest times lies a forgotten relic, a well long abandoned, hiding secrets too horrifying to imagine. Secrets buried during World War II that, to this day, leave a chilling mark on those who hear the tale. Welcome to Eerie Road Tales, where we uncover the most unsettling horror stories rooted in history. Tonight, we delve into the haunting mystery of a well that stood witness to unimaginable horrors during the Second World War. This is a tale of survival, desperation, and the dark truths that lurk beneath. By the end of this video, you'll uncover the terrifying secret that lay hidden beneath a family's farm, a discovery that blurred the line between compassion and horror during one of humanity's darkest chapters. Poland, 1944, a country gripped by the relentless shadow of World War II. Near the infamous Auschwitz concentration camp, life was defined by constant fear and uncertainty. The air carried the weight of survival, with every family fighting to stay unnoticed, every decision a matter of life and death. The Nazi regime loomed over the land, and for many, escape from the horrors of Auschwitz meant fleeing into an unknown wilderness, desperate for sanctuary. Among the scattered farms dotting this unforgiving landscape was a small, secluded chicken farm, a fragile sanctuary for one family of 6. The father, a cautious and hardworking man, sought to protect his wife and children from the atrocities unfolding nearby. His wife, steadfast and resilient, tended to the daily needs of their home while keeping their most vulnerable members safe. Their twin toddlers, Michael and Igor. Identical twins were a particular obsession of the Nazis, targeted for horrific experiments. The family lived in constant fear that a knock at their door could shatter their fragile peace. Their eldest son, a teenager thrust into responsibility beyond his years, bore the weight of their survival on his shoulders. Nights were restless, his thoughts haunted by the stories of nearby raids and the faint cries from the direction of Auschwitz. Though their farm was isolated, it was far from safe. The proximity to the concentration camp meant the family had to tread carefully, their lives dictated by a delicate balance of compassion and self-preservation. The farm itself was modest but functional. Rows of chickens clucked in their pens, a lifeline for the family's sustenance. Behind the farmhouse stood a weathered, moss-covered well, long abandoned and seemingly forgotten. It was an unremarkable structure at first glance, blending into the surrounding countryside. But as the war raged on, this unassuming relic would become the center of a chilling mystery, a mystery that would test the limits of the family's courage and compassion. The well stood as a silent witness, its dark depths concealing horrors that no one could have anticipated. It was a relic of another time, its wooden cover rotting away, allowing only the bravest or the most desperate to peer into the abyss. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the family began to notice strange occurrences on their farm. Chickens vanished without a trace, leaving no feathers or signs of struggle. Footprints, bare and human, appeared in the mud after the rain, leading directly to the well. This was the world they inhabited, a world where every sound in the night could spell disaster, where the simplest anomaly could unravel into something far more sinister. The well, once overlooked as an artifact of no significance, would soon reveal its dark secrets, pulling the family into a nightmare that would forever scar their memories of the war. The tranquility of the family's isolated farm was shattered one evening when they began to notice something unusual. The chickens, once their reliable source of sustenance, were disappearing. At first, the losses were small, a single bird here, a missing egg there. The father dismissed it as the work of a fox or a stray dog, natural predators that roamed the countryside in search of easy prey. But as the days turned into weeks, the disappearances grew bolder and more frequent. Entire cages were left empty, the doors to the pens ajar as if opened by unseen hands. The family was cautious by necessity, but this new threat struck a chord of unease. They couldn't afford to lose their livestock. It was their lifeline, their fragile means of survival in a war-torn land. The father, a man of practicality, took to patrolling the farm at dusk, his lantern casting flickering shadows against the walls of the coop. He set traps around the perimeter, hoping to catch the culprit. Yet each morning, the traps remained untouched, the losses mounting with no sign of the predator. It was the teenage son who first noticed that something about these disappearances didn't add up. One rainy night, he stayed awake, determined to catch whatever, or whoever was responsible. He sat by the window of the farmhouse, his breath fogging the glass as he strained to see through the downpour. Hours passed in silence, the only sound the rhythmic patter of rain against the roof. Then, just as he began to nod off, a movement caught his eye. A shadow darted across the garden, quick and deliberate. It wasn't an animal, he realized it was a person. The figure moved with an eerie grace, avoiding the light of the lanterns as it made its way toward the chicken coop. The boy's heart pounded in his chest as he watched, frozen in a mix of fear and curiosity. The figure emerged moments later, cradling a chicken in its arms, and disappeared into the darkness toward the old well. The next morning, the boy shared what he had seen with his father. Together, they ventured out to the coop, examining the ground for signs of the intruder. The rain had left the earth soft, and there, in the mud, were the unmistakable imprints of bare human feet. The tracks led in a straight line from the coop to the well, where they stopped abruptly. The well had long been a forgotten fixture of the farm, its wooden cover rotting and overgrown with moss. It hadn't been used in years, its depths a mystery even to the family. Now it seemed it was hiding something or someone. The father, torn between compassion and caution, decided to take a measured approach. He left a note at the well's edge, written in hurried, scrawled letters. "Whoever you are, you have 2 days to leave. If you remain, the well will be sealed." The message was as much a warning as it was a plea. The family wanted no trouble, but they couldn't ignore the growing unease that had settled over their home. The father's decision brought little comfort. Each passing hour seemed to stretch into eternity, the silence of the farm broken only by the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. The teenage boy, more curious than afraid, found himself drawn to the well. He would sit nearby, his eyes fixed on its mossy cover, imagining what might be lurking beneath. His mother, sensing his unease, warned him to stay away. "Whatever is down there," she said, her voice trembling, "it's not our concern." But how could it not be their concern? The well was part of their land, their lives. And now, it was the center of a mystery that threatened to unravel the fragile sense of safety they had worked so hard to maintain. The family grew restless, the unease spreading like a shadow over their daily lives. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind, felt like a harbinger of something greater. The well, once a forgotten relic, now loomed large in their thoughts, a dark presence that seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The family's unease grew heavier as the hours ticked by. Despite his parents' warnings, the teenage son couldn't quell his curiosity about the well. It seemed to call to him, its dark, moss-covered mouth an invitation into the unknown. One night, driven by equal parts courage and fear, he decided to act. Armed with a flickering lantern and a rope tied around his waist, he prepared to descend into the well. His father protested, but the boy insisted, his voice firm despite the tremble in his hands. "If someone's down there," he said, "we need to know." As the boy lowered himself into the well, the air grew colder and damp, carrying the earthy scent of decay. The walls were slick with moisture, their stones uneven and jagged. The faint glow of the lantern cast long shadows that seemed to move and shift with each step he took downward. The light above grew smaller, a pinprick in the overwhelming darkness that now surrounded him. The sound of dripping water echoed, each drop amplifying the suffocating silence. The descent felt endless, the boy's breath coming in shallow gasps as the confined space pressed in around him. Then, his foot touched something solid, a ledge hidden deep within the well. He steadied himself, raising the lantern to illuminate the space. What he saw froze him in place, the light trembling in his hands. In the corner of the ledge crouched a figure, a man, or what remained of one. His skin clung to his bones, pallid and bruised, his eyes sunken and hollow. The stench of decay was overwhelming, and as the boy's gaze shifted, he saw the source. Scattered around the man were the remains of others, skeletal figures in tattered clothes, their lifeless forms twisted in unnatural positions. The man clutched a dead chicken in his bony hands, tearing at its flesh with an animalistic desperation. He muttered to himself, his voice a low, guttural whisper. The boy's voice broke the silence. Who are you?" he asked, his words trembling as much as his body. The man didn't respond, his attention fixed on the chicken. The boy stepped closer, the lantern casting its light over the horrifying scene. Then the man looked up. His eyes met the boy's, and for a moment, clarity seemed to return to his gaze. He spoke, his voice hoarse and broken. "They're hungry. My wife, my children, they need to eat." The boy realized, with a sickening dread, what had happened. This man had been hiding here for weeks, perhaps months, stealing chickens to feed his family. But his family wasn't alive. The bodies around him told a tragic story of desperation and denial, of a mind pushed beyond its breaking point. The man had refused to accept their deaths, clinging to the delusion that they could still be saved. "You have to leave," the boy said, his voice thick with emotion. "My father, he's going to seal the well." The man shook his head, tears streaming down his hollow cheeks. "I can't leave them," he whispered. "They'll die without me." The boy knelt beside him, placing a trembling hand on his shoulder. "They're already gone," he said, his words barely audible. "You have to let them go." The man's sobs filled the space, a raw, guttural sound that echoed off the stone walls. Slowly, he released the chicken from his grasp, his body shaking with the weight of reality crashing down on him. As the boy climbed out of the well, the man's tear-streaked face lingered in his mind. The father was waiting at the edge, pulling the boy to safety. "Did you find anything?" he asked. The boy hesitated, glancing back at the well. "Just emptiness," he replied, his voice heavy with unspoken truth. The morning after the boy's descent into the well, a heavy silence hung over the farm. The family gathered around the old structure, the father carrying thick wooden planks and nails, the mother clutching the twins close to her chest. The boy stood apart, his gaze fixed on the dark, mossy opening, as if it might still whisper its secrets to him. No one spoke of what had been found or the man who may or may not still be down there. The father's face was etched with resolve, but his movements were slow, deliberate, as if sealing the well was not just a physical act, but a final goodbye to something they could never understand. With each nail driven into the wooden planks, the reality of the situation weighed heavier. The sound of the hammer echoed across the farm, cutting through the stillness like a morning bell. The boy flinched with each strike, his mind replaying the tear-streaked face of the man he had found below. He couldn't bring himself to tell his father the full truth of what he had seen. The family needed closure, not more questions. Once the last plank was secured, the father stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. He stared at the well for a moment, his lips pressed into a thin line, before turning away without a word. The boy lingered, his heart heavy with doubt. Had the man left during the night, slipping away into the woods? Or was he still down there, silently watching, as his only escape was sealed shut? The thought haunted him, a gnawing uncertainty that would follow him for the rest of his life. The days that followed were marked by an uneasy calm. The farm, once filled with the comforting routine of chores and the clucking of chickens, now felt different, colder, quieter. The family went about their tasks with a newfound urgency, avoiding the well as though it no longer existed. The twins, too young to understand, played in the yard with laughter that felt out of place against the somber backdrop. The boy, however, couldn't shake the weight of what had happened. His nights were restless, filled with dreams of the well and the man's hollow eyes staring back at him. He would wake in a cold sweat, the faint sound of sobbing lingering in his ears. Even the farm itself seemed to carry the burden of the secret, the air thick with an unspoken tension. The family never spoke of the well again. It became a silent agreement, an unbreakable rule. The father forbade the boy from going near it. The mother refused to answer his questions, and the boy himself stopped asking, knowing the answers would bring no solace. The well, once a forgotten relic, was now a sealed tomb, both literally and metaphorically. Yet, despite their silence, the memory of the well lingered like a shadow over their lives. The boy would often find himself staring toward its location, wondering if the man had truly been real or if his mind had conjured the horror in the depths of the well. The father, though stoic, carried an edge of unease in his voice when he spoke about protecting the family, as if he, too, was haunted by the unknown. Even years later, after the war had ended and the family moved away, the well remained a phantom of their past. The boy, now a grown man, would think back to that night, to the man's broken voice and tear-streaked face, and feel a pang of guilt. Had they done the right thing? Should they have tried to help him, even at great risk? Or had they been right to seal the well, ensuring their own survival above all else? The well was no longer just a physical structure. It had become a symbol of the moral dilemmas and haunting uncertainties that war forces upon ordinary people. It was a reminder that some secrets are best left buried, even if they never truly disappear. For the family, the well was a chapter they could never erase, a wound that healed on the surface, but festered beneath, in the quiet corners of their minds. The story of the well is more than just a haunting account of one family's experience during World War II. It is a profound reflection on the human spirit, on what people endure and how desperation can twist even the most basic instincts for survival. The man in the well was a victim of war, not just in the physical sense, but in a deeply psychological one. Stripped of hope and faced with unimaginable loss, his mind retreated to a place where denial was his only refuge. He clung to the illusion that his family was still alive, driven by a love so powerful it became his own undoing. In times of war, survival often comes at the cost of compassion. For the family above, sealing the well was a necessary act to protect their lives. Yet, that decision came with its own weight, leaving them to grapple with a question that would haunt them forever. Could they have done more? Could they have found a way to save a man whose life had already been shattered by forces beyond anyone's control? These are the kinds of moral dilemmas that war forces upon ordinary people, making heroes and victims out of everyone in its path. But was this simply a tale of psychological trauma, or could there be something more? The eerie silence that followed the man's discovery, the footprints that disappeared without a trace. These details blur the line between the tangible and the supernatural. Was the well merely a hiding place, or was it something more, a place that drew in desperation and magnified it? Perhaps the well wasn't just a physical space, but a symbol of the darkness within us all, a reminder of how close we are to the edge when pushed by circumstances beyond our control. Throughout history, stories like this have emerged from times of great turmoil. During the siege of Leningrad, for example, there were accounts of people resorting to unimaginable acts of survival, their minds fractured by hunger and isolation. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, survivors told stories of hidden places where others clung to life, often losing themselves in the process. These tales, like the story of the well, force us to confront the depths of human resilience and the fragility of the mind. The well story also echoes legends of places tied to suffering and despair, locations where the past refuses to stay buried. From the ghostly apparitions reported in former war zones to the eerie silence of abandoned buildings, these stories remind us that history leaves an imprint, not just on the land, but on those who inhabit it. The well, long forgotten and overgrown, became more than just a relic. It became a repository of pain, a vessel for memories too heavy to carry elsewhere. As we reflect on this story, we're left with more questions than answers. Was the man in the well a symbol of war's cruelty, a cautionary tale of the human psyche under extreme duress? Or was his presence a manifestation of something beyond explanation, something tied to the land and its history? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain. The well will remain a chilling reminder of the shadows cast by war, shadows that linger long after the final battle has been fought. So, what do you think? Was the story of the well a tragic account of psychological trauma and desperation during wartime? Or did something far more sinister lurk beneath its shadowy depths, entwined with the land and its dark history? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights might just unlock another layer of this chilling mystery. If this tale left you with shivers, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Eerie Road Tales for more stories that blur the line between reality and the unknown. Join us on this journey into the eerie, where history and horror collide in unforgettable ways. And remember, sometimes, the scariest horrors are those left buried just beneath the surface.